Welcome, everybody. It's great to see you. As we wait for more people to join, please let us know from where you are and write that in the chat. Just a few housekeeping messages before we start. Today we have interpretations in 10 languages, so you are welcome to choose the language you prefer to listen to. In the bar below in Zoom, there is a globe, so you can choose there your language. If you choose the floor, it will be English. Another thing is there is a chat and there is a Q&A chat. So if you have questions for our panelists, please, your question should be typed in the Q&A and not in the comment chat. And now I see that we are about 200 people. We reached 200 threshold. Let's wait a few more minutes and then we go. It's great to see you. This is the global launch of Glocal Evaluation Week 2026. And it is my pleasure to introduce you, Jos Vaessen. Jos is the Senior Advisor and the Chief Evaluation Officer of the Independent Evaluation Group of the World Bank. And Jos will be doing the opening remarks. So Jos, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Patrizia. And welcome, esteemed colleagues, to this year's Glocal Evaluation Week. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Glocal is an annual knowledge-sharing event that brings together the global monitoring and evaluation community. And the GEI has convened Glocal since 2019, and by the end of this year's edition, the initiative will have hosted more than 2,600 events across all its editions. This year alone, we expect close to 20,000 participants, which makes Glocal one of the largest M&E knowledge-sharing initiatives in the world. And that is really a testament to the energy and commitment of this community. As you know, this year's Glocal runs from June 1st through the 5th, and we have more than 330 events taking place across regions and sectors. And I would like to take a moment to thank the 248 event organizers who are making this possible. Glocal is a community-driven initiative. It works because people across the world step up to share their knowledge, to share their questions, and to share their experience. So thank you to all of you. This year's theme is evaluation, evidence, and trust in the age of AI. We selected this theme because AI is raising questions that go to the heart of what evaluation is and what it is for. It asks questions around how we generate evidence, how that evidence is used, and how evidence is trusted or not. And all of this is being reshaped by technology that is evolving faster than any of us can fully keep up with. So these questions have to be answered by the evaluation community, and we have to engage on these seriously, and Glocal is the right place to do that, together and across the diversity of perspective that this Glocal community represents. Today's opening session is titled, Who's Driving? AI and the Future of Judging What Works and What Matters. We've brought together 4 leaders in the M&E field to help us reflect on the future of evaluation in the age of AI, each bringing a different vantage point that we think will make for a rich and thought-provoking conversation. So let me introduce them to you very briefly. First, we will start with a keynote presentation to set the stage for a subsequent panel debate. And the keynote will be delivered by Estelle Raimondo, who is the head of methods at the Independent Evaluation Group of the World Bank Group. After Estelle's presentation, she will also join a panel which will be moderated by my colleague Doug Glandon, who is the acting program manager of the Global Evaluation Initiative. And joining Doug and Estelle in the panel will be 3 other panel members. First of all, Marta Kluttig, who is the Associate Director at Kluttig, which is one of GEI's regional implementing partners. Sakina Mwinyimkuu, Director of Division of Government Performance Monitoring and Evaluation in the Prime Minister's Office in Tanzania. And finally, Linda Raftree, who is the founder of the MERL Tech Initiative. Thank you very much to all the panel members for joining us here in this event. But now let me hand over to Estelle, who will start this session with her keynote remarks. Thank you very much, and Estelle, over to you.
Thank you, Jos. Hi, everyone. Just taking a quick look at the chat. It's dizzying to see. It's quite unbelievable. Everybody's joining from so many different countries. So that's very exciting. And it's a real pleasure to be opening this Glocal 2026 and to have an opportunity to share with you a little bit of our IAG Independent Evaluation Group journey with using AI in evaluation practice. We've titled this talk, as well as our AI strategy, A Journey of Discovery, in reference to Albert Hirschman's development project Observed, and his reference to a journey of discovery as the attitude or the posture that evaluators must take when they conduct evaluation. And I also think that it's fitting as an attitude when embedding AI in our evaluation practice. The central idea is, of course, what posture to take when faced with a lot of uncertainty. And for us, it really boils down to three things: curiosity, an open mind for experimentation; humility, not thinking that we have very quickly figured everything out; and thirdly, being clear-eyed about the perils as well as the potentials. And so IAG's journey of discovery is quite unique. It is shaped by the unique context of the largest evaluation function in an international organization, within an institution, the World Bank, that has decided to be a first mover on AI, offering a wide range of models and capabilities to staff. This is not the most typical environment, and probably not the environment that you are in. So I'm not pretending that the lessons that I'm sharing are universal. But I also know that in our journey, we've discovered a lot of things that will speak to widely shared problems in the use of AI for evaluation practice. Bridging rigor with innovation, adapting evaluation workflows to the use of AI, training, upskilling, reinventing ourselves, and thinking about our careers, and thinking hard about the place of human evaluators, as well as governance issues. So I'm hoping that at least the journey itself will be informative, even if the destination is quite different for all of you. So in my talk today, we'll have three parts. The first one is to give you a little bit of a sense of what this journey was about, how we have experimented with AI since 2018, and above all, which will be the second part, what are the lessons that we have learned along the way, what has really cemented what we have figured out. And then I will finish with a third part, which discusses what remains really unsettled, where we haven't really found a pathway yet, and we are still searching. So let me start with the journey. That will be the first part. And when we think about AI, we must have a common definition. Maybe your mind will go right away to chatbots, such as the OpenAI widely known ChatGPT, which is something that can be very much used in our evaluation journeys. But for us in IAG, AI is quite different from that. And so I would like Claudia now, if you could bring up some of the slides that I have prepared, that would be very helpful. And we can go right to the next one. Thank you. So as you can see from this diagram, we have been using different kinds of data science and some are simple text mining, and then little by little, we have incorporated AI. First, what we call discriminative AI or conventional AI. For several years, we've used it to extract meaning from text and from images. Discriminative AI is an AI that manages to reproduce rules created by a human, but does not generate any new content, new text or images. We've also started to experiment for the past 2 years with generative AI, including large language models, but not always with chatbot, with API first and foremost. Generative AI is, of course, a type of deep learning where AI have been trained to not only reproduce rules, but also generate new content. What has been mostly leveraged in evaluation so far is a type of deep learning, which is large language models, AI that has been trained on a wide range of data, mostly from the internet, and is now able to answer many of the questions that we have in our practice. We've also experimented with geospatial analysis, and more recently with geospatial AI, or GeoAI, which includes machine learning and deep learning techniques, as well as computer vision applied to spatial data or images. So next slide, please. And so as you can see, we've leveraged LLM in quite a lot of our use cases, in quite a lot of our evaluations so far. And just to give you an idea of what we're doing with that, we in IAG tend to have thematic evaluations, or some of you might think of these as portfolio evaluations, which span a large number of projects, 300, 500, sometimes more than that. Each of these projects can have more than 6 to 10 documents that are associated with them. And so as you can imagine, this is a vast amount of text as data that we can deal with and we need to mine and understand as evaluators. And so before using AI, we had little armies of analysts and data scientists extracting meaning from these texts, classifying them, summarizing them, categorizing them. And we also use a lot of literature in our evaluation. Again, academic, gray literature, vast amount of text that we need to make sense of. So we have started to think about ways of semi-automatizing these. And that's what we are now working on with LLMs. First, as you can see from these slides, with different kinds of models, and now more recently with creating our own web-based application of AI, which is the next slide. So we are now working on a workflows that is very similar to what we would do in evaluation, having a conceptual framework, identifying either projects or literature or documents, or even geospatial database that are important to us. And then extracting meaning, annotating or classifying, summarizing and synthesizing. And we're working on embedding different kinds of AI, sometimes discriminative, a natural language process will be fine, and sometimes generative, but always with human in the loop. And so these little manual boxes that you can see in the diagram are not an option, they're mandatory. So in our workflow, we really make sure that when we build applications, they have the human in the loop at their core. Next slide. In our journey, we have also experimented with geospatial AI, as I mentioned before. So one way we've been doing that is by incorporating large-scale model-generated data sets as analytical inputs. That was the case, for instance, for biodiversity for a livable planet evaluation, where we used the dynamic world land cover data provided by different providers of data to really monitor across different protected areas the evolution of land cover. Another way of leveraging AI in geospatial analysis is by applying computer vision models directly to raw data, as you can see from this slide, which is leveraging digital streetscape, so images from, some of you might be using Google Image sometimes, and then classifying them to try to understand the level of greenery in cities where the World Bank had projects. You can now stop sharing the slides. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a window in the technical journey that we've been in. But this journey has not just been technical. It has also been about the ethics of AI, about change management. What does it take to upskill, to learn together, and to reconfigure our teams to be using AI effectively? It's been a journey of understanding our data ecosystems as well as IT, and finally thinking hard about the types of partnerships that we need in order to be effective in this journey. So we didn't start with all the answers, and we haven't found them all. But in the process, we've really generated some pretty profound lessons that have crystallized for us along these years and that have now informed our AI strategy. And so I will now turn to sharing these lessons. I have boiled them down to 5 key things. The first one is really the principle of quality first, not efficiency, not speed. This is a demanding path towards AI scale-up in our work, but it's the only way forward for an independent evaluation function. The second lesson is that rigorous evaluation design is always the starting point. It's very important to resist the hype, to maintain a very clear and independent perspective. IEG produces rigorous, triangulated, independent evidence about what works for whom and under what circumstances. AI is not changing that. It's enabling us to do that better. And in this sense, really the quality of the evidence that we use in our evaluation is absolutely critical. So the lesson here is better evidence, better AI. And we need to invest quite a lot in curating the knowledge base that we apply AI on to make sure that it distinguishes between good evidence from not so good evidence, or what some of you may know is referred to as the garbage in, garbage out problem. And this is not a trivial thing to do. It requires quite a lot of time and investment. The third lesson is AI needs to be an accelerator for data improvements, not a substitute for it. And as many of you know, the fuel for AI is data, but we retain a lot of data gaps, especially in development landscape. And so AI is not the easy solution for bridging those gaps. We actually need to continue investing in data generation, and this will be really the key for leveraging AI well. In IEG, for instance, recently, we've discovered that one of the key impediments to leveraging GeoAI is the lack of very detailed geospatial information, geolocation of our projects. We don't always know with specificity where our project sites are. And so it's nice to try to put some dashboards in place to try to leverage geospatial, but if we don't really know where our projects are with specificity, if we have this data gap, then AI cannot be leveraged meaningfully. So we are trying to also work on that with our colleagues in the World Bank to make sure that these data gaps are being bridged, and we are taking AI as a good moment to invest in those data gaps. The fourth lesson is that new tools and powerful tools require new governance models and new governance mechanisms. We have a lot of risk frameworks floating around. They are critical, but they are not sufficient. And so we need to really think about how we can empower users to hold themselves and each other accountable for the responsible use of AI. This is key, and this is not easy either. There is quite a bit of asymmetry of information between those who are users of AI and those who are the classical checkers of the quality of evaluation. If you are in evaluation offices where you might have different levels of management, this quality assurance framework where the hierarchy is in place doesn't work very effectively when AI is in the mix. So we also need to innovate with our governance mechanisms, and we are trying to do that at IAG as well. We need to make choices about where we want to go, where are the red lines, and how we can make sure that we empower each other to hold those red lines and continue to innovate in a responsible manner. And the fifth lesson is that successful adoption requires more than adoption of new tools. It requires a change management plan. That means really thinking about a maturity model, and that's what we have in our AI strategy, a framework where we are trying to think about the progress we need to make in multiple dimensions, including thinking about the skill sets, thinking about our accountability mechanisms, how we can work together and learn from each other, but also sometimes reinvent ourselves. So these are some of the critical lessons that have informed our strategy and where we think we have a good hold on where we need to go, not necessarily how to get there. And so I will now finish with the last part, which are some of the things that we still haven't figured out. We're still really thinking about what is the right pathways. I'm going to boil it down to 4 different topics. The first one is that we're still searching for a clear boundary between what can and what cannot be delegated or in the realm of AI application. What we know, and there are many, thinkers and philosophers of science who have worked on the relationship between machine and human for a long time, is that AI is simply ordering, classifying symbols that have no actual meaning to the machine. Right? These 0 and 1 don't have meaning. There is no semantic behind them in the machine. So we really need to think about what is quantifiable and meaningful, because everything can be quantified, but not everything can be meaningfully calculated. These are some of the rules of mathematics. And so in the realm of evaluation, we also need to ask those hard questions. What can be part of an algorithm and what cannot? There are many aspects of social science and social realm that cannot be modeled well. And so we should stay away from thinking that AI can be applied everywhere. But we still don't really understand fully that boundary. The second thing that we haven't really figured out is the right hybridation mechanisms between the human and AI. We know some things. We know that the human needs to retain control of some of the very important piece of the evaluation puzzle, which is the judgment. But there might be some areas where, human error is more important than algorithmic errors. We also know that if we cut some parts of the process by automatizing it, sometimes it can also give us a partial picture of what delivering an evaluation is, and that can be dangerous. We know that some of our colleagues actually love to do classification tasks. And so if we cut that from their workflow, that can be alienating. But we don't have currently we don't have fully figured out what is the right mix of AI and human and how to really think about all of these dimensions of what makes our work meaningful and how to preserve that. The third thing we haven't fully understood yet is how to create safe spaces to experiment, but also having red lines. And the balance here is if you have too many red lines, then you can have the risk of shadow AI, where some colleagues might still use AI but not transparently disclose that. And that's tricky. But if we don't have any red lines, then there is a lack of guidance and there is a risk for misuse. Again, this balance is very tricky and we haven't fully mastered that. And finally, and not least, we haven't fully figured out how to factor in the significant environmental costs of AI. We're very aware of them. We're starting to really think about how to bring those costs in our decision frameworks, but we haven't fully identified the way to do that. So there are still quite a lot of things that are in the making, and I'm really much hoping that our discussion with the panel, but above all of the very exciting sessions that have been organized through this Glocal Week can help us also think hard about some of these and give us some of the path forward. So I'm looking forward to the next step for today and all the remaining sessions. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Estelle, for your excellent presentation. This is actually a very useful reference point for what comes next. But before we get into that conversation, let me say a word about what we're trying to do here, with some humility about the size of the task. AI and evaluation, or AI in M&E, is not one topic. It's many topics, and we have 45 minutes and 4 panelists. So needless to say, we're not going to cover this comprehensively. What we will try to do is surface some key considerations, questions, and tensions across several different perspectives to prompt further reflection, but not to provide answers. Many of the sessions during Glocal this week will go much deeper into the specific issues we touch on today, so look out for those. The backdrop for this discussion is that AI is already reshaping how information and evidence are generated, analyzed, and consumed, whether any given institution or individual has chosen to engage with it or not. Decision makers and the public now have access to tools that produce instant, confident-sounding responses to questions that may have previously taken months of rigorous evaluation to answer. Those responses may or may not be accurate, but they are fast, accessible, and they're changing expectations about what evidence looks like and how quickly it should be available. One implication is that if the evaluation profession does not have a compelling answer for what it offers that a chatbot cannot, it risks becoming irrelevant. At the same time, the profession can't hand over its core judgment to AI in pursuit of speed and efficiency. Evaluation's value rests on the rigor and credibility of human reasoning applied to evidence, as Estelle was highlighting. If we compromise that, if the outputs look polished but the thinking is thin, or if the people commissioning evaluations suspect that AI did all of the analysis, then we undermine the very thing that makes evaluation worth commissioning. So, in a way, the evaluation profession, as with many others, is being squeezed from multiple angles. Ignore AI and lose relevance. Lean on it too heavily and lose credibility. Ignore the risks and cause harm. And to add to the challenge, none of these are problems that can be solved once. The tools keep advancing, expectations keep shifting, and the risks keep evolving. These are some of the core issues this conversation will explore. We have 4 panelists coming at this from different vantage points, and 4 broad questions. How AI is showing up in different institutional contexts, where AI can contribute value, what capabilities are needed, and what risks to watch out for. So let's get into it. Martha, I would like to start with you. When you hear Estelle describe IEG's experience, what translates to your context at Clear Lac and what doesn't? And is AI even a priority for the government partners you're working with?
Thank you, Doug. Well, I was listening to Estelle and gave me at least 2 feelings at the same time. The first one is truly I admire what you are doing. I can see that you have been like a couple of years already working in these topics. A couple of years ago, these topics were really, really new. So I think that you were like doing a real nice innovation. But also at the same time, I feel a bit of dizziness because it is a lot, basically, and especially for the countries in our region. Because what you have described is in the context of an institution that has the money, the mandate, the people, the knowledge, the skills. However, unfortunately, that is not where the most of the governments we work with in Latin America and the Caribbean are right now. That said, The core ideas also apply, of course. At least two of them are particularly interesting and applied for our context in the region. The first one is the fact that the design should be before the device. I think since we are a little bit behind you, we are able to learn from your experience. So it's important to fix the idea, to establish the idea that we need to think first what evaluation problem we are actually trying to solve. It's not about the tool, it's about the problem. And then we can think about what is the best tool that we can get, basically. And that is true no matter how big or small your institution is. It's something that you should have in mind always. And the second is related with the fact that peer governance tends to beat paper governance. I mean, like the real progress I have seen in the region often doesn't come from national AI policies. It tends to come from a group of people sharing in the same, like Glocal, like sharing what works, what didn't work, and all the experiences, the questions, the pending answers, etc. And that can happen anywhere. So we have to use that opportunity to share, basically, especially those that are a little bit further than the region that can show us the way of doing things. We don't have to be trying everything once and twice, while knowing that organizations like yours, Estelle, is already making a real progress. So I want to be honest. For most of the governments we work with in Latin America and the Caribbean, AI is not yet an active priority, but that doesn't mean there is no interest. What I actually see is curiosity, a growing sense that AI may be able to help somehow in the different parts of the process of evaluation. So I think that we are in the moment that we are questioning about where do we start? What do we do first, basically? And unfortunately, some people is going ahead of us, so can give us some advice in terms of answering these questions. So MI teams in ministries are already overloaded with their main responsibilities. So the question they are asking is not really how do I use AI? It's more like how do I produce good evidence with what I have already in place? That said, things are starting to move. One example that I want to highlight is the Caribbean Evaluation Space, which is going to be hosted by the Caribbean Development Bank in September this year. And that is going to be a place where these conversations can happen. And hopefully we are going to continue the conversation that we are going to have this week in a way that we would not have been possible to have 2 years ago. That is the innovative things. We are facing new challenges, and so new challenges that I think that this conversation couldn't have been in place 2 years ago. So my short answer is the ideas translate, of course, and I really appreciate how much we can learn from the experience, but the conditions not yet. And that gap, I think, in my opinion, is where I think we can do some of the most useful work for the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martha. Okay, Sakina, turning to you. So from your position leading performance monitoring and evaluation at the Prime Minister's office in Tanzania, how is the government currently approaching AI relative to your core priorities? And what would you say is the government's level of readiness for this change?
Thank you very much. Good morning from your side. Good evening from Tanzania. I think the discussion is really good, and thank you to Estelle and Jose who have just set the tone very well. And talking from the government side, as I do work under the Prime Minister office, which is the coordinator for monitoring and evaluation in the country, we are thinking that AI cannot be 100% be left behind. But the important question that we are always asking ourselves is how can AI help us to strengthen governing performance and help us to in evidence-based decision making? Because we, as you know, we operate on the structure that covers up to the local government area, and we are still thinking on the opportunity that can be grabbed from using AI for analysis and other methods for it. But the challenge are still existing. As we all know, currently we have some gaps across our councils. So we are trying to look it in a way that we need AI, but the challenges are still existing. Challenges related to data quality, challenges related to fragmented systems. So looking on the readiness side from the government is very important. You can adopt and use it, but if you have not set the ground very clear, the environment to facilitate AI to be implemented, to be used for evaluations, then it will end up into a huge and a very big challenges. But we have, I have heard a presentation from Latin America and Caribbean on the challenges of competing priorities. We also thinking that we might need an AI to support on evaluation, but we are looking on the challenges related to completing priorities, especially those that bring basic needs to our citizen. Government sometimes cannot be able in a position to balance investing on AI with immediate development priorities such as building infrastructure, connectivity, and staffing, as well as the public service delivery in general. So we also think the adoption of AI must be practical, phased, and aligned with our national development priorities rather than being driven by global excitement. So one of the important that we have to think before adopting and using it from the government side, I think is looking on building the foundation for it, especially on the public sector data and M&E systems, while gradually building the capacity to use, and of course, to use it strategically for improving service delivery. So from the government side, I can say AI is not starting from technology alone. So it needs to start also from government priorities and service delivery. But all in all, we still need it. But the very important question to ask ourselves is how ready most of the government are in adopting and using it for improving service delivery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sakina. So Estelle, coming back to you, you've just described IEG's journey with AI, years of experimentation, trial and error. So for people in the audience who are earlier in that process, what were the most important things that IEG learned? Let's say up to 3 things about where to start and what to prioritize.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, I think I have the benefit of hindsight, right? We've been at this for a while. 2020 was kind of a really pivotal moment for us with the pandemic. We kind of really invested much more. But it's been a messy journey, like all journeys of discovery. So in hindsight, I would say the 4 real key things have been, and I know again, this is not necessarily possible for all of our evaluation models and institutions, but it was fundamentally critical for us, is hiring 1 data scientist first and then 2. And to date, this is still the real core team of people who have been so important to the journey. We have more now who have been embarked on this journey, but at the beginning, really, these 2 people were absolutely critical. And the reason I'm saying that is that, we had tried a bit of outsourcing, of using universities, of using consultants, and the brokering process that needs to happen, or the knowledge bridging process that needs to happen between people who have the real technical ability, which is not going away with the use of AI. I feel like we really actually need that key basis of fundamentally understanding what is behind these models, how these tools work, to be able to understand where to go and where not to go. And the evaluation practice on the other side, our evaluation teams who are absolute experts in delivering evaluation, this brokering process is crucial to do the right thing. And so having 2 staff members within IAG who have learned a tremendous amount of how you deliver evaluations, and conversely, our evaluators have learned a lot from them in, embedding data science and AI into their application has been fundamental. So, as close as you can get to that model of working together, embedded in a team, this is very important. The second lesson, and where starting has been really key, is that we've had the privilege, I would say, to be able to experiment quite freely. And the way we've done that is by embedding experiment in the production of evaluation, not having a little team on the side with your sandbox and doing their own thing, but really making some space in the delivery of evaluation to try new applications. And we've been able to do that because in our methodologies, we always also had a safety net, right? So that evaluation teams, if the use of AI, the innovation didn't turn out to be helpful in the end, they could still answer the evaluation questions, right? So we made sure that we had this safety net, and that allowed evaluators to take a little bit more risk and to be open to trying new things. So that has been really critical. And the last thing I'll mention is that fairly early on, we convened a community of practice in IAG. IAG is is a relatively big entity. We have more than 100 colleagues and more consultants as well. So having this community of practice elements, creating this safe space to learn from each other, to also have joint initiative of coming up with job aids, with guidelines, has been really, really helpful. And so if you are in a small entity, joining communities of practice outside of your organization, perhaps like the MERL Tech one, I think is really important, because learning on your own is key, but learning together is even better, obviously.
Thank you, Estelle. Okay, so hiring data scientists, embedded experiments with safety nets built in, community of practice. These are 3 very concrete starting points that hopefully our global audience will reflect on and consider how they might be able to incorporate those. I want to reflect just briefly on what we've heard before we move on. So one thing is the sheer volume of AI-related content in the evaluation space, guidance, training, tools, policies, can create the impression that everybody should already be getting started, taking action. But Martha described a regional context in which AI is not yet a high priority. Sakina was clear that AI adoption in Tanzania needs to be phased, aligned with national priorities, and built on foundations that are not yet fully in place. So we should just take a moment and remind ourselves that the supply side advances in the technology and the enthusiasm for AI in certain groups, the global excitement, as Sakina put it, should not be interpreted as a signal that AI is suddenly an urgent priority everywhere, or even that the communities that are not talking in public fora about AI share the same perspectives. So let's take a step back and ask a pragmatic question. Where specifically AI might bring the most value to our work? So Martha, I want to come back to you. Given what you've just described, limited AI activity in the LAC region, the capacity challenge, where in the actual work of M&E and evaluation do you see AI contributing the most value?
Thank you, Doug. Let me start setting the stage with the core problem that we have in the region. I think it's not only a problem that we have in our region. I think it's a worldwide problem. But for years, governments in Latin America and the Caribbean have faced the same challenge. They are asked to produce solid, timely evidence and help to make decisions. But doing that well costs a lot, actually. Hiring good evaluators, collecting data properly, producing high quality analysis, all of that takes money, skills, and time. And most of the M&E teams in our region just do not have it. AI does not fix that on its own, but I believe that it can drive real productivity gains in the sense that Estelle was saying, you can use AI not only for the evaluation, you can use it for any other parts of the evaluation process. For example, for the data collection, classification of the data. So you are kind of in the safe place because errors there are not so high stake as errors in the evaluation process by itself. So the same team could be producing more and better work if they use correctly the AI, and not necessarily with more resources to operate, which is like the promise of this. The same small team with the same budget can now do more analysis, faster literature reviews, better data collection tools, and they can make also the findings easier to communicate. For a ministry, M&E system that was already doing a lot with a very little, that kind of boost can make a real difference for them. And I want to be clear about where that works best. And it's not for any team. It is for teams that already have the basics in place. People who understand what a good evaluation question looks like, what a good data set means, and why context in evaluation is important. AI is not going to fix everything for you. You need to have at least the theoretical knowledge in place. When those foundations are there, AI can really expand what they are able to do. It helps them to work at a level that before would have been demanded a much bigger team or a much bigger budget. That is the promise I find most realistic. Not AI replacing evaluators, it's not going to be that, but AI helping governments to do more with what they already have. And in a region where capacity has always been the main barrier, that is not a small thing that we can reach. So I think that we can use the benefits with a full knowledge of the risks, and we can use it in our favor in the places where the evaluation processes are more safe, basically. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. So, Linda, I want to come to you. I would like to get your take on this question as well. Perhaps thinking specifically about generative AI, which, as Estelle noted, many people have experienced firsthand through chatbots like ChatGPT. So generative AI has driven much of the recent surge of activity and interest in AI. It's something you've been spending a lot of time working on and thinking about in the past few years. So what patterns are you seeing in terms of how people are hoping to integrate generative AI into their work?
Sure. Thank you, Doug. And thanks everybody for your really interesting points and everyone for joining in today. So I'm representing here the MERL Tech Initiative. Estelle mentioned that we have a community of practice with about 2,000 individual members from all over the world. And we formed the community of practice because we saw that there was so much excitement around generative AI and very little capacity at the beginning. People didn't understand what it was. How does it work? What is it for? Can we trust it? So lots and lots of questions. And so we've been really focused there over the last 3.5 years, really trying to bring the community along, bring the community together. And we were at first looking quite a lot at the adoption of generative AI and thinking through the evaluation cycle. What are the places that generative AI can bring value? What are some of the risks we should be aware of? And we're also thinking a lot about what are the evaluation frameworks that can help us to monitor and evaluate the adoption of AI, whether that's internally or whether that's in programs. So there are a lot of programs happening around the world that are integrating AI, generative AI right now into health, into education. And so we wanted to start working as well on what are the frameworks that would help us to evaluate the effectiveness or the contribution of generative AI in programming, as well as just AI adoption. So some of the patterns that we're seeing, there's a lot of interest in how we can use AI for internal or back office efficiencies, which some folks have mentioned already on the call. A lot of NGOs, foundations, and governments are really hoping that with cuts in budgets recently, that maybe AI can help us to do things more efficiently or more quickly or with lower cost. There's also a lot happening amongst academia and scientific research, things like clinical decision tools, automated decision making, which we have some questions around in terms of potential for bias, but that's starting to work its way into how governments are working in terms of vaccine development, addressing climate with smart energy grids. So there's a lot of research happening around the potential for different kinds of AI to support the research. We've seen also tools that support frontline workers. So this might be a job aid that's supporting a health worker, agriculture extension workers, NGO workers, but also enumerators and evaluators. We're seeing emerging tools that are aimed to try to create systems that are supported by AI that can help evaluators to do their work. And then we're also seeing a lot of chatbots. There's kind of a proliferation of chatbots. Everyone thinks they need a chatbot for everything. So we're seeing a lot of chatbots, which is again why we think it's really important to think about what are the frameworks by which we're evaluating the effectiveness as well as the safety of things like chatbots. Finally, we're starting to see really interesting things happening at a more systems level. So there's emerging investment or growing investment in languages. For example, we know that AI has a lot of issues, generative AI, with hallucinations or falsities, errors, things like that. And part of this is stemming from the type of data that's in AI. And so if we don't have strong representation of different languages, then the AI is not going to work as well. And so there's quite a lot of investment happening right now to create language models that can respond and that can function in multiple different languages rather than just the more dominant languages. So those are some of the pretty interesting and exciting things that we're seeing.
Excellent. Thanks, Linda. Yeah, so the 4 distinct patterns of AI emerging in the sector, and also a useful reminder that this isn't just about AI for M&E, but it's also M&E for AI-enabled programs. It's a helpful distinction. So let me briefly take stock of what we've heard in this last exchange. One is even with just two perspectives about needs AI can help address, we've already surfaced quite a range from workflow efficiencies, document drafting, scientific research, to tools that serve communities directly. Martha also highlighted that this also might be about not just how we can do things better with AI, but changing who is able to produce the evidence and where it is being produced. So there's an important shift there that may be political or representational. It's also worth reiterating a point that Estelle made in the initial presentation, and that is that though we use the term AI broadly in this conversation, primarily because it's a launch event about AI and evaluation, the panelists have actually been referring to a wide range of different technologies. You heard about some from Linda. Estelle mentioned a range in her presentation, generative AI, discriminative AI, subsets within those. So when we talk about AI in monitoring evaluation, we're talking about many different tools and technologies for many different types of uses. So which brings us to capability. Now, what does it actually take to be AI ready? So Linda, I want to stay with you for a moment. So what are the key capability needs that you are observing? And what kind of support are people asking for? And is AI literacy as simple as it sounds?
It's definitely not simple. And we usually like to talk about critical AI literacy because, as other people have mentioned on the call, Sakina and Martha, there's a huge amount of hype happening around AI, and a huge kind of rush to jump into it. And so one of the things that we work on a lot is making sure that when people are not just learning how to use tools, but learning how to critically understand the context in which those tools have been developed, the context in which they may or may not work, and really thinking through what the potential could be for risks if we're starting to integrate generative AI in particular into our work. And so I really liked what you said, Estelle, that it's not, we're not trying to be AI first, we're trying to be quality first. And then AI can help us maybe be quality first, but really not try to be the quickest, fastest group that's adopting AI just to adopt it because we want to be seen as being innovative. And so I think some of the things that we're seeing is really a need to do better, what we would call formative research. So when we're designing tools, are we doing all of that pre-research about the users who we expect to use tools, whether that's an internal audience in our organizations or whether it's at a community level? What is all the pre-research that we need to do? And how do we design digital tools for different types of populations and make sure that those tools will be safe and effective and efficient and improve quality or augment quality? We really need to draw from our past learning. Generative AI is relatively new, now 3.5 years out there, but we've been designing and developing digital tools for a very long time. We've had ICT for development, we've had mobile for development. And so all the things that we know, all the lessons that we learned around digital transformation, digital adoption are still true. We can't just throw everything we learned out because now we have a new cool thing. We still need to learn all those lessons around adoption and user-centered design, and really layer the new things about generative AI onto our body of learning. So that's why when we talk about M&E, it's always the monitoring, evaluation, and the research and the learning. How are we bringing the learning back? I think also thinking about the underlying infrastructure and human needs. So as I think Estelle and you, Doug, mentioned, do we have the data that we need to actually support better generative AI? AI is layered on top of a real physical world. And so there's only so much that you can do with AI. We still have human pace of things, especially for working in communities. We might be able to shorten the data collection time to 24 hours or write an M&E plan in 15 minutes using generative AI, but there's still a whole lot of human behavior change and human engagement that needs to happen along the way. So I think the literacy that we're really pushing for is that critical literacy that is a range of skills, considerations, capabilities, capacity to assess, and really thinking of this not as all falling onto an individual, but what are the systems, the institutional and the sector-wide skills, capacities, and critical thinking that can help us. And again, monitoring, evaluation, research, learning, turning that inward to ourselves so that we're documenting our uses, we're testing our uses, and the World Bank has done, IEG has done a fantastic job of testing and then documenting testing that you've done and really being objective about how you're testing and trying tools and then sharing that learning. It's going to be a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But I think that all of us working together and really sharing learning as we can in places like GLocal and our community of practice can really help us to learn together and not have to make all the mistakes on our own.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, so that's a lot. Estelle, how is IEG approaching training and capability building on AI?
Like the rest, we've tried a lot of things, and at this point, I would say we haven't really cracked that nut. So I think that's something we're still very much working on. What we know are that there are some key components. From the very beginning, we were thinking about different kind of user profiles. Obviously, this is very internal. So, we have our categories, we have our data scientists, they need something specific. We have our evaluators and team leaders, they need something else. We have our leadership team and so on and so forth. So we were really thinking about user profile. Then with you and the GI, we really tried to anchor it around a wider competency framework. So really trying to distill those skill sets, additional literacy element. And I think Linda's expression of critical AI literacy is really nails it. But then how to really convey that in a training, in a curriculum, it's tricky. So I would say that one-off trainings, mostly like everything else, is not going to be sufficient. We're very lucky at IEG and at the bank that there is a really nice data talent board, which is institution wide. And so there, the upskilling of people who are working primarily with data scientists, data analysts, etc., is kind of taken care of. And so that's really great, because this is not something that we have a comparative advantage to think about. Then for the evaluators, we also need to really think collectively. We're working, for instance, in the context of the evaluation cooperation group to think about a curriculum that would make sense for all of us. But it's difficult. The second element is, of course, the community of practice. We already talked about this. Linda highlighted, the MERL Tech piece. This kind of informal spaces. For us, we also have kind of on-the-job aspects of training where we have some of our data scientists accompanying others on a kind of journey of applying a new model, a new way of working to their work. This is really good, but it's hard to scale up. And then lastly, I think there is definitely an element of self-learning that we need to really think about. And it needs to be within a managerial understanding that it cannot be about performance, but it needs to be about mastery. And I'm using research from Nicola Spatola, a colleague, who showed that if you have, if you're learning with AI under a scenario of performance, you need to deliver fast, under budget constraints, etc., you're going to cut corners, you're going to become dependent, you're not going to be using these critical AI literacy skills, you're just going to get it done, and that's dangerous. If you put in a situation of more mastery, understanding how to work with AI, really trying to understand what's behind it, testing different things, being able to be skeptical and critical, this is the way to go. But having this kind of, cultural and managerial environment for that is the tricky part to put in place. So still more questions than answers for us at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Estelle. Martha, I want to come back to you briefly. So AI sometimes is described as a democratizing force for evaluation, which overlaps with some of the points that you were making. the possibility of doing evaluation faster, cheaper. There's a little bit of a contrast with some of the points that Estelle has emphasized and the importance of quality first. But you made the point that AI potentially could be a capacity multiplier. So from what you see in your work in the LAC region, what would it take for AI to achieve that and to have this sort of democratizing effect?
Thank you, Doug. Well, actually, it's the democratizing effect is not gonna land in our region just because we are using AI. We need to set the stage. We need to follow some rules because moving fast, as Estelle said, without quality and without direction can also make gaps even bigger, basically. So we have a risk, and now in the region that feels like a real risk. So at least three things will need to be true, I believe, in my opinion. First one, start from the problem and not from the tool, as I said at the beginning. And also Estelle said the same thing. It's like, before asking how can I use the AI, the right question to make is what problem I am actually trying to solve. Once that is clear, you can see if AI can help and how, and you can reach for answers and you can reach for help. When do you do it the other way around, you end up pushing tools onto these teams that may not need it or maybe are not ready for it yet. And that usually benefits the teams that are already in a good place, not the ones that need help the most. And second, the people need the human skills to use it, AI well, and before we start using it. Hopefully not after. It's exactly what Linda was saying. Like, we need some level of literacy to use correctly AI and to really benefit from the good parts of the AI, which can be the democratizing effect. A team that cannot question critically what AI gives them is not necessarily better off. They may just be making AI-based mistakes, basically, and they are not going to be even aware of them. That step is often missed, and that is where things tend to go wrong. And the last one, principle, I think we need to set is that this cannot be solved one country at a time. It's not efficient from a national and regional perspective. Common solutions for common problems, common ways of working, common training practices, common quality and ethical standards. All these are things that the region can build together, can learn together. So that a small M&E team in a ministry somewhere in the region does not have to find all the answers on its own. So basically, the idea of approaching this challenge all together as a region make us feel that we are gonna benefit from the AI use with a higher likelihood. So start from the program, build skills first, and work together. I think that those are three basic principles that we need to follow. It's not so the benefits reach all the teams, and especially those that need it most, not just the ones that are already strong and ready to face the challenge. So in this way, AI could even reduce the gaps across the M&E systems in the region. At least that is the promise. If we do it right, we can reach this democratizing effect.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martha. Okay, so Sakina, I want to come back to you, and in the interest of time, I'll ask you to see if you can respond to this very big question succinctly and take on that challenge. So the question is this: from a government M&E perspective, what capabilities are most critical for engaging with AI responsibly? Where do you see the biggest gaps between the available support and what government teams actually need.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doug. As I've said, looking on from government perspective, AI is not only about technical skills. I am looking it as a combination of 3 or 4 things, like looking on the systems, how have been developed to allow adoption for AI in evaluation, but also looking on the structures, how the government structure can support and make a smooth use of AI for evaluation. But the most important is the infrastructure. Together, they need, it's a combination of those things. So in Tanzania, the institutional arrangements for monitoring and evaluation, of course, extend from national level to down to local government level. So whatever you are planning to adopt for the country, like Tanzania, you need to take a bit consideration of its administrative structure. And as we all know, most of the data are collected from the local government level. So more efforts need to be put into that level. And any meaningful integration for AI in the government M&E system need also to consider this administrative structure. Looking on the level of staff, looking on the level of the system, it's also very important to consider when it comes to adoption of AI for the government, because I truly agree with Maria, as she has said, integration for AI for evaluation. You can also think of just using AI in some of the process for evaluation and not fully utilization of it because of the challenges they have just shared, which is embedded to administrative structure of the government. And similar to the system level, we still have a challenge of data quality. So garbage in always comes with the garbage out. So if we have not put very well our structure and infrastructure at the data infrastructure at the local government level, and then you put the adoption of AI, automatically the results that will come out will be doubtful because the foundation is not well built. So this challenge is very crucial to be considered, but also connectivity issues, because while digital transformation is progressing and internet access and stable digital infrastructure are still uneven in most of course, global South countries, including Tanzania, especially at the village level, where a lot of data are also found from there. So if local remains disconnected, then AI at national level may risk producing incomplete and inaccurate analysis, as I've said. Although, for example, in our country, we are trying to improve some of course, to increase internet connectivity. And last month, we had a very big launching a project of installation of like 700 communication towers into village levels. So we're hopeful the government is ready for that, although it takes time because some of the structures are not well established. But also we need the readiness for government is very important because it will set the base for reliable data and proper findings for proper decision making for policy and for planning. And we are now we are starting implementing our national development vision. So we still have a hope that if the government will continue put the environment ready for adoption for AI, then can help to, of course, can help on the implementation of our plans and programs. But the question still remains on the readiness of government in terms of setting the structure and systems for AI adoption. And of course, I was just suggesting maybe instead of using, or instead of running to using of AI, we still need to build more capacities using the traditional methods, because we did an assessment in last year, and we still have a challenge of evaluations doing evaluations, but also using evaluation for decision making. And I still call for my other colleagues working in the government. We don't need to run to using the AI. We need also to improve our capacity and capabilities. And then moving forward, we can also think of using AI, although it is a very important tool, but we need also to rethink and check our internal context if we are ready or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sakina. So I was hoping we would also have a chance to get into some of the many risks and how to mitigate all of those. But in the interest of time, I suggest we take a few questions that have come in from the audience. So I will read a couple of questions, try to direct them to panelists, and I would request that as you respond to the question, please keep your response succinct. First question will be to Estelle. So you mentioned that you were able to experiment because you built in safety nets. Can you elaborate on the safety nets that you incorporated in your evaluation processes to mitigate AI use risks? So first question to Estelle. Another question that I'll just read to Martha or Linda. Maybe either of you could respond to this so you have a chance to think about it a little bit. The question is this. Much of the conversation around AI in evaluation assumes a level of organizational and financial capacity that most civil society organizations and non-governmental organizations do not have. If AI adoption widens the methodological gap between well-funded multilateral evaluators and small grassroots implementers, we risk building a more sophisticated version of the same inequality that evaluation was meant to address. So from your perspective, what concrete mechanisms might the evaluation community propose to ensure that AI tools reach organizations working at the last mile and not just those with the budgets to adopt them? So let's start with those two questions. Over to Estelle for the first.
Yeah, very quickly. So what I meant is that, when we design our evaluations, we try to make sure that our evaluation teams could answer their evaluation questions, no matter whether the AI experiment was successful and meaningful or not, right? So we were not putting all our eggs in the AI basket, but we made sure that we still had, conventional way of answering the questions, so that there was oftentimes at the beginning a data scientist, but now others kind of working alongside the evaluation team and experimenting while also making sure that the conventional approaches were in place so that at the end of the evaluation, we were not in a situation of not being able to answer the evaluation question. And of course, that can apply to different scales, right? So I think when you work on your own, with an AI tool, having the ability of testing its capacity means that you also need to be able to keep your eye on what would be the answer in a conventional manner. So it's kind of setting up this experimental approach.
Thank you. Thank you, Estelle. Okay, so Linda or Martha, do you want to take the second question? Thoughts you'd like to share on that?
Yeah, I would like to say something because it's related with the democratizing effect that I was talking before. I think that from a very practical and concrete perspective, I will say that the community of practice can be a very nice way of sharing experiences. So those that are small teams that they are not so ahead of the challenge, I think that they can get all the information about what works already and what doesn't work. So they are not going to be using the scarce resources doing experiments, basically. So they can go directly to the solution because someone already did the experiment and said, this is the best way of doing X, or X to solve problem A, for example. So I think that can be some very practical solution. And also I think that we may think, maybe this is for the future, I don't know if we can do it right now, but joint developments. I think that at least in the region, we have common challenges, common problems. So I think that we can join together and we can build some developments based on research, content-based, context-based research, so we can build all together at the same time solutions that can be adapted for each context of the country. So I think that those kind of endeavors can be very useful, especially for those countries or teams that they don't have enough resources to close the gap with those that are in a better place in terms of resources to face the challenge. So I think that those, like the very concrete idea is community of practices that I can see that we have some of them globally, especially, and I think that we can think about having joint developments across the countries, for example, to reduce the cost of or the investment in technology at the beginning.
Thank you, Martha. I don't know, Linda, if you wanted to weigh in on that one as well. I'm seeing you nodding. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly, because I agree with what you said, Martha. And I think in our community of practice, we do have some folks from the large organizations, but most people are from smaller organizations, from NGOs, from foundations, who don't have data scientists on their teams, who don't have the incredibly long-term capacity that the IEG has. And so that's one of the main reasons that we thought it was important to have a community of practice. And then also what you said, Martha, with kind of I know that Latin America is a huge continent, Africa is a huge continent. Not all of the countries are having the same issues, but there are some commonalities. There might be language commonalities. There might be other ways that we can really share resources or and so I think communities of practice, obviously, because we're leading a community of practice, but we do have these sub-working groups for the continental or the regional focus as well. And I totally agree that we should be thinking about how we can share resources, how we can invest in maybe certain language models or certain tools that will be very relevant for the context that different types of organizations are working with. So yeah, I totally agree.
Thank you very much, Linda. I would love if we could go around and address the next 25 questions. But in the interest of time, I think I would like to thank all of you for your presentations, for the discussions, and hand it over to Jos to share some closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Doc, and thank you very much to Estelle and Marta and Sakina and Linda for great reflections on this, quite complex but very important topic. If I'm not mistaken, and assuming that panelists are not represented by deepfake videos and participants are not represented by chatbots, we have quite a bit of interest in this session. So I hope we can carry this interest forward into the next sessions of AI. Just very briefly, 2 points, substantive points. One that didn't come up in the discussion, but which may come up in your professional practice. Be prepared to answer the quite simple and naive question from decision makers around that goes along the following lines. Now that I have AI, why do I need M&E? For us, this comes across as very simplistic and naive, but please think about how M&E can be augmented by AI and how AI actually relies on the foundation of rigorous and good evidence coming from M&E. So be prepared to answer that question in different contexts. And then the second point, which came out of this session very clearly in various ways, Estelle kind of introduced this idea of quality first, and I think that can be easily translated into questions first, research design first, AI later. So do not fall into the trap of data-driven or AI-driven evaluation research as you move forward. And of course, there were many, many interesting reflections on the added value of AI, the capabilities that we need for applying AI, and also what are some of the risks. These are too many issues that we cannot cover in one session only. So I hope you enjoyed the discussion today, and I look forward to having further discussions on these and other topics in the next week when we talk about these topics in Glocal. So thank you again very much for being here, and see you next week in all the other sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all participants. Great discussion. Thank you to our panelists. So again, an invite to be part of the Glocal discussion. Tomorrow we will have regional launch in Latin America, the day after in Africa, and then we will start in earnest the Global Evaluation Week on Monday, June 1st. So I hope to see you there. The recording of this presentation will be shared online shortly after. Thanks again and have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Sakina.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.